Imagine opening your kitchen cabinet and finding a food that could outlive you, your kids, and probably your grandkids. That food already exists. It is honey. Archaeologists have found honey in ancient tombs that is thousands of years old and still preserved well enough to eat. Honey is low in water, very acidic, and full of natural antibacterial compounds together that turns a simple jar of honey into one of the most stable foods on Earth. Now let me mess with your head a little. The same food can taste different, even before you change the recipe, just by changing the plate. Studies show that when exactly the same dessert is served on a white, round plate, people rate it as sweeter and more intense than when it is on a darker or more angular plate. Your brain is not only tasting with your tongue, it is also reading the shape and color of the plate and quietly changing the flavor in your mind. If you ever thought airline food tastes weird, that is not just a meme. At cruising altitude, the cabin is dry, noisy, and pressurized. That combination can knock down your sense of sweetness and saltiness by around a third. That is why airlines often add more salt, sugar, and spices to the same dish than they would on the ground. The funny part is that some drinks actually taste better up there. That is one reason so many people crave tomato juice or ginger ale only when they fly. Here is a space twist you probably have not heard before. One of the first serious vegetables to go to space farm school was the potato. In the mid-1990s, NASA and researchers from the University of Wisconsin managed to grow potatoes on a space shuttle using special mini-tubers nicknamed quantum tubers. They were testing how to grow reliable, high-calorie crops for long missions. So the next time you see fries, remember, potatoes have already started training for life on other planets. And speaking of space food, the first food an American astronaut squeezed out of a package in orbit was not some crazy futuristic gel. It was applesauce. During the 1962 Friendship 7 mission, John Glenn ate applesauce from a tube as part of an experiment to see if humans could even swallow and digest normally in zero gravity. So applesauce quietly holds a tiny, strange world record in food history. Now let us come back down to earth and talk about ketchup. That is not really ketchup. In the Philippines, there is a bright red sauce on the table that looks like tomato ketchup, but the main ingredient is actually mashed bananas. Banana ketchup was created around World War II, when there was a shortage of tomatoes but plenty of local bananas. A Filipina food scientist named Maria Orosa helped develop early versions of the recipe, which combined bananas, vinegar, sugar, spices, and red coloring, so it looks familiar but tastes sweeter and fruitier. For millions of people, that is the default ketchup. Here is a fact that goes against what a lot of people assume: fresh is not always automatically more nutritious. Good studies comparing fresh, frozen, and canned fruits and vegetables found that frozen and canned versions can be just as rich in vitamins and minerals, and sometimes even more, because they are processed right after harvest. The real problem is not the freezing or canning. It is the extra sugar, salt, or heavy syrup that gets added. So a bag of plain frozen broccoli can absolutely compete with the fresh one. Let us look at something more modern and a little darker, hyper-palatable foods. Scientists use that term for foods that are engineered with very specific combinations of fat, sugar, and salt that make them hard to stop eating. Think of chips that seem to disappear by themselves, or ice cream that makes you go back to the freezer again and again. Recent research analyzed hundreds of thousands of products in supermarkets around the world and found that a huge share of packaged foods are now hyper-palatable. Your cravings are not just about willpower. In many cases, the recipe is literally designed to hook your brain. Finally, let us jump to the future of food. Around the world, scientists and companies are investing in new food sources like farmed insects, seaweed, lab-grown meat, and climate-resilient crops. The goal is not just to be weird. It is to find ways to feed more people with less land, less water, and less damage to the planet. Some of these ideas are already in supermarkets in a few countries. Others are still in the lab, waiting for the moment when they move from science fiction to your dinner plate. So the next time you open your fridge or order a snack, remember this: that food is part of a much bigger story. It is playing with your senses, flying through the air, surviving for thousands of years, orbiting the Earth, and maybe even preparing us for life on other planets. And if you want more strange true stories hiding in everyday things, make sure you stick around, because there are a lot more facts where these came from.